Christina Bologna. I'm the administrative assistant for Coastal Community Capital, who puts these workshops on. We are a commercial lending company. We've been in business for just over a decade. We provide millions of dollars of loan capital to small businesses and entrepreneurs every year. The other part of our business is technical assistance through the Entre Center, which is what these workshops are under the umbrella of. So we provide these workshops, but we also provide free business counseling through Cliff Robbins, who's the senior management counselor at the Massachusetts Small Business Administration Center, Development Center in Fall River. So that is a free service we provide. If you would like to make an appointment with him, you can do that for me. My card's out on the table, and he's in our office every Friday. We are going to be talking about QuickBooks today with Frank, and I believe that this is a special workshop that he sort of created, for this time that we are in right now. So I'm going to turn it over to him, and hopefully you guys all enjoy this. There are evaluation sheets in front of you. If you could please be so kind as to fill those out at the end of the workshop. I appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. How many were not here last week? Okay, so I recognize you all. We've been met you before.
Maybe for a community event.
Okay, so I didn't know if everyone had been here before. So, by way of introduction, my name is Frank Guinan, and my company name is Integrity Business Solutions, and the company is just me. I work out of my home office in Yarmouthport, and the primary service that I provide to the small business community is I sell, install, and train owners, managers, husbands, wives, anyone or everyone who has QuickBooks, I'll train. It's usually one-on-one. I've done some group training, and my primary purpose is to empower people to use the program fully. And this presentation that I put together is a step up from my other presentations. The intent is that you have a tool here that is equivalent to the tools that the CEOs of larger companies have. This is going to tell you, these reports, the budgeting, is going to tell you the financial health of your business at any given point in time. What I always say is that you now have lost your ignorance. You can no longer say, well, there's no way I could anticipate that. There's nothing I could have done about it. Yeah, if you've got QuickBooks sitting on your desk and you've got data in there, you've got this incredible tool to tell you the financial health of your business at any given point in time. So that's what we're going to do today, is go into some depth of those particular features. So what I've done for you this afternoon is I've put a binder together that's for you to keep. You could write on it, take it home, do whatever you want with it. And it's a representation of every slide that I'm going to present this afternoon. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. This is only the second time I've presented this. I did it, Tuesday night? And I went a little long, so I'm going to make an adjustment. We're supposed to be done by 5. There will be no break. I'm just going to go straight through. So if you ask a question that I can't answer, what we can do is after the presentation's over, I can hang around and answer the question for you directly, and if I can't answer it at that point. Actually, I did have a question that was raised last week, and I did research it, and I'll be emailing the people with the answer. So I'm part of what's called a QuickBooks Speakers Bureau, which is awesome because these people are QuickBooks certified pro-advisors in large cities like New York, Los Angeles, Dallas. So they have exposure to larger companies and more complex QuickBooks issues. So if I can't figure it out, I query these people, and they're very generous to give information back. So it's just a network of people like myself. So if I can't answer it today, I do have resources that can get you answers to your specific questions. Another service I provide this time of year is, you see on the last part of my name, MBA. I have advanced business training, advanced business experience, and what I often do is play that intermediary role between the tax accountant and the owner to help get the books the way the tax accountant wants it, or at this time of year to get the books ready to do the tax returns. And again, it's all about empowerment. If I do my job right, I eventually wean you off of me. So you stand independent using the program like a head of Google or Yahoo or Jack Welch or GE or whomever. That you should be able to use this program fully independent of me. So that's one of my goals in training people is to get them independent and using the program effectively. So before I get started, are there any questions? How many people have QuickBooks? Hopefully you all have QuickBooks. Okay, good. All right. At the end of the session, I'm going to hand out a questionnaire so you have to fill out. Again, this is the second time I've done this. I did get good feedback the other night. But again, I'm not shy. Tell me the good, bad, and the ugly, anything like different. All my presentations I've adjusted according to other people's comments. So please let me know how I did. So the objectives of today's presentation is I'm going to provide a broad overview of the report center. And then I'm going to go one step further beyond the reports, which is how to customize the various reports, how to modify them, how to just get deeper into the reports. And then finally, the last section will be going over the budgeting feature within the program. The screens I'm showing you is from QuickBooks Premier 2008. Much of this applies to QuickBooks Pro. I'll point out where it's specific to QuickBooks Premier. But within the program, there's an icon, Report Center. You just click on that, and it brings you here. And so if you see along the left-hand side is all the categories of the various reports within the program. And you click on any one of those sections, and then you get the various reports that are available according to that section. So you click on any one of these, it'll bring you into the report. And in here, it gives you the description of the nature of the kind of information that the report will provide. And then you get the blue links that will open up and give you more information about the report. Yes?
Is that any different than when you just go under reports and you see the standardized reports that are they the exact same ones you described?
Exactly. Exact same reports, but this is a little more user-friendly. A lot of information about the report. Okay. Yeah, this is a great place to start. And so generally what I encourage people to do is, if you're a hands-on manager, and I hope that's why you're here today, you're a hands-on manager, hands-on owner that really wants to understand your business, just devote an afternoon and just go through the reports, read the descriptions, and then just open them up and see what kind of information you get out of it. Because there's so much in here. There's a lot. So the starting point on the summary financial reports within QuickBooks. These are the basics of using the program that most all of you, if you've been using the program, are familiar with. And these reports you should be monitoring regularly on a monthly basis. And the key to these is that if there's issues in these, then you go to the detailed financial reports. And these reports kind of go behind the scenes to say, hey, if something's off within these summary reports, these detailed financial reports will help you isolate what's going on within your data. Now these are specific industry reports, and this is only found in QuickBooks Premier. And the great thing about these is that what QuickBooks does is kind of like what we're doing today. They gather a bunch of contractors together, and they have them sitting with laptops and querying them with how they like the program and what kind of information they like to get out of the program, what's lacking, and all of that. So what QuickBooks has done has customized their program for different industries according to meetings just like this. It's one of their strengths. It's what I love about QuickBooks. They're constantly querying their customers, saying, hey, what can we do better? And that's what QuickBooks Premier is all about. It's designed and geared for a specific industry. And point two here is that in QuickBooks Pro, one of the intents of QuickBooks Pro is if you're a growing business and you're a hands-on owner or manager, you're eventually going to hit a wall with the reports to say, well, why can't I get this? Why can't I get that? So the only way to get the information out of QuickBooks Pro would be to export it to Excel or to hire someone like myself to customize the reports for you. So that's why if you anticipate that, yes, I'm really going to want some very specific detailed reports from my company, QuickBooks Premier will be the product for you. And these are by industry, some of the ones that I picked out. Various ones for contractors, retailers, and professionals. And what's consistent about QuickBooks is that a report in one industry is basically just a variation of a report in another industry. For example, estimates versus actual in contractor is identical to the build versus proposal in professional. It's just using different lingo specific to professionals versus lingo specific to contractors. But it basically grabs the information from the same places and presents it in the same way. Just different titles and things like that. Let me go through those. Okay, so I click my report center icon. So the best place to start is the company financial tab. These are the basic reports you have as I listed on that slide. The first one being the P&L standard. And right now this is in the expanded view. If you wanted to collapse it, it just makes it a little easier to read. And this, along with your balance sheet standard down here, are the two documents that you would provide to your tax accountant at the end of the year. And this is just plain vanilla. This tells you, here's my income for you in the contractor world, here's my job-related costs, so there's my gross margin, and then here are my overhead costs, and there's my bottom line, my net income. That's what your P&L will tell you. And again, if you're entering in the data correctly and daily, you can generate this report at any time. Same thing with the balance sheet. So what this tells you is your total assets starting in order of liquidity, the ability to convert to cash. So the top of the list is cash in and of itself, and then it just as you go down the list, it's more long-term assets. So you go from your cash to your receivables, to inventory, down to your fixed assets here. Then it gives you your total assets. So you have at a glance, I'm going to hit collapse. You have at a glance all your total assets here. And then on the liability side, you have your trade payables, you have credit cards, payroll liabilities, and then your long-term loans. And we have a banker here with us tonight, and this kind of document used properly can go a long way towards enhancing your relationship with your banker. They like to lend to people that are organized and have good information. So this is all done. They get a picture of the health of your business, to know the relationship between your assets and your debt, what your equity looks like. So again, at the click of a button, you have two documents that can be used for banking relationship, and also be used for your taxes at the end of the year. Alright, so now you have on here your P&L, and you have your sales number. So you have the next report will be your accounts receivable agent. So back at your report center, you go to your customers and receivables, and I just click on my agent. I'll hit collapse. So that's as of 12/15/2011, and let's see my balance sheet as of 12/15/11. So we have receivables of $35,810.02. That's on the balance sheet. Should match your aging year, $35,810. So this here gives you the breakout from what's on your balance sheet of who owes you, how much they owe you, and how long they've owed you for. In any one of these, you can just double-click and get more detail. So you have that invoice there that's connected back to that balance.
Did that collect the user of jobs?
Exactly right. Yep. So if I expanded it, jobs, projects, depending on what kind of industry you're in. But in this case here, this is Larry's landscaping, so these are specific jobs. So the customer is Scholar Day Sporting Goods, and he did a project on 155 Wilkes Boulevard and 75 Sunset Road. So what I just tell people, the leftmost indented name is the payor, basically, the customer. And then on the vendor side of things, you have the payables. So if I click on here, I have a total of about $2,600 in payables. And my balance sheet again shows $2,600. So this gives you the detail. Now sometimes these will not match for various reasons. So I just made a presumption here that you all would understand. Those need to match. The balance sheet shows $2,600 for your payables. This agent should show $2,600. If they don't match, you have a problem. And sometimes there are reasons, data entry errors that they will not match, and how the information is booked. So the key is to make sure they do match. Now here's a great report that a lot of owners don't understand. It's the statement of cash flows. So if I take and change this to last fiscal year, let's see if we get something a little more profitable here. Let's do extra quarter. Yeah, last time we talked about I just want to give you a positive number here. Okay, so we got $8,500 for last month. I'll change the P&L to last month. Okay, so you got $8,545. Now, to coordinate these reports, the profit and loss is on an accrual basis. That means this is reflecting income on the basis of invoices and expenses on the basis of payables. So the bottom line here is $8,500. You can see the top of your cash flow, $8,500. So what I often hear from owners is, well, my bank account can go up by that much, because when you look at your taxes or your P&L at the end of the year, there's a number. Hopefully it's a positive number. Hopefully it's a good sized number. The question is always asked, where is it? Where did the money go? This tells you where the money went. Okay, so in business school, in accounting, that was a real nightmare. To generate statement of cash flows, it take hours to generate that. Now within seconds, you have this report that tells you your books show $8,500 bottom line on an accrual basis. Your negatives will tell you money out, and your positives will tell you money in. So in this instance here, your accounts receivable increased by $12,000. So although you have an $8,500 bottom line, that represents $12,000 of money you haven't collected yet. Okay. See if there's any other big numbers here. Inventory increased by $5,800. So you have some money tied up in inventory. You pay down a loan, $435, because when you pay down a loan, the principal payment on it does not affect your profit and loss. The owner took out $2,500 as well. Again, that does not run through the profit and loss. That runs through the balance sheet. So, good reminder to the owner. Yeah, the reason you don't have that is you pull $2,500 and just put it in the pocket account. So that's not reflected on the profit and loss. So for all of you that are comfortable with your profit and loss and balance sheet, go one step further and run this. If you have any question about where the money goes, if you purchased any equipment, that's not on here. If you purchased equipment, it might be on the expanded one. So, change that. Yeah, so you bought a truck for $13,750. Okay, so again, that does not affect the P&L. Oh, you remember you bought a truck? Oh, yeah, that's right. So this really completes the picture of the relationship between your profit loss and your balance sheet. Tells you where the money went. So I strongly recommend getting familiar with that report. Another valuable report, which is going over with a client today, is the cash flow forecast. So assuming you have your receivables and payables in there correctly, what this will tell you is with a beginning balance of $116,000 and the timing of your money in from your receivables and your money out on your payables, this will be your cash balance at a projected point in time. So this is a nice way if you're trying to monitor cash and things are tight, particularly during the slow season. This is the slow time of year. You can get a sense of when am I going to get. Actually, the client that was asking today was their threshold for the line of credit with their bank is $10,000. So they need to know when am I going to do $10,000 because I don't want to kick my line of credit. I'll just transfer some money out of my other account. So they're constantly monitoring to see if this gets close to $10,000. monthly reports, detailed reports. I found out recently that this is, for any of you, I'm sure you're all familiar with GE, the former CEO of GE, Jack Welch. And one of his favorite reports is this first one here, the profit and loss previous year comparison. So if you notice him, the assumption here is you have all your data in, you've got all your accounts reconciled, and you're current. I mean, you're getting these reports in a click of a button, very powerful reports, and you don't have to wait on your tax accountant to give you, because in the old days, you had to wait on your accountant for this information. You might get that quarterly, twice a year, maybe annually. Now you, at your desk, you get these reports that tell you powerful information instantly. Alright, so we're Larry here. What you can do at a glance is you've got the current year, you've got the past year, and then you've got the dollar difference and the percentage difference. So you do have the capability in here of having QuickBooks highlight the negatives in red, so that will jump out a little more. But basically what you're doing going down is just picking up on any major changes from year to year. So as an owner or as a manager, if there are significant differences, you can double click on anything here. For instance, you have interest expense went up a little bit, so you can double click and make sure that everything's been coded properly, because you feel like, well, our interest hasn't changed. In essence, it's actually gone down, so our numbers should be down. So you can double click in here, look at the transactions that make that up, and make sure everything's coded properly. If it's not coded properly, you can just double click and say, well, this entry right here wasn't for interest expense, it was for office supplies. And recode it and then make sure it's in its proper bucket.
I'm not sure to say comparison work. Can you sort by the change or percentage change?
Yeah, you have up here in the upper right, you can sort by just the total.
Well, you do by change, I don't understand that. You can't see who the big winner. I kind of exports this a lot. So
Right.
Look who the big losers are, the big
Right.
winners are.
Right. So you would, if you wanted to do those last two columns, you'd have to export to Excel and sort it that way. This only gives you one column to sort it. So the key thing here in your report is to isolate those that stand out, the biggest discrepancies, and understand why, if it makes sense or not. If it doesn't make sense, you drill down deeper and make sure everything's coded properly. Then try and manage from there if everything wasn't coded properly. Another big report is the profit and loss by class. So remember, we generated our P&L. I think we did one. Okay. So you get your 8545. I mean, just in your mind, to put any number to that could be 8,500, 85,000, 850,000. That was on P&L. Now, particularly in this environment, that could lull you into a false sense of complacency to say, hey, what's the total number up there? On total income of 24 grand, I brought in 8. So that's about a 33% bottom line. That's pretty good. So you can be like, I'm doing great. Well, if you are using QuickBooks to separate your business by classes, which can be by location, if you have multiple locations, or by lines of business. In this case here, the sample file is using design, landscaping, and maintenance. Then they have an overhead category. So if I hit collapse here, you can see that, again, just ignore the title here, but imagine this is one of the classes versus overhead. This particular division, this continuing line of business, is losing money. I'm making money overall, but this particular division is a drag a significant drag relative to my net income. So again, within a few seconds, you know instantly your lines of business, which ones are profitable, and which ones you may consider, dropping, closing a location, moving out of a particular line of business. This tells you that up front.
Are your expenses then done by class as well?
Yep. Your income and expenses, all recorded by class.
And is that available in Pro or just Premier? Or is
It's an all version. You can do journal entries by class. Any transaction in QuickBooks can be recorded by class. Now, again, on your profit and loss, you had an income number. We just said it was about $24,000. Question is, that you should be asking is, where'd that money come from? How did it shake out? So we, again, do last month. Class. So, up by $24,000, this is how it shook out among all my customers. And as a point of customization here, just skipping ahead a little bit, but this report really lends itself to it. If I add a column, and I put in percentage of column, and I hit OK, and I hit sort by total, do descending. So, of my business, again, 24,000 is just an arbitrary number, but for Larry's Landscaping, 20% of his business is represented by upper design. And then Abraham Williams at 12%, all the way down to these smaller customers. So at a glance, this Larry knows who his best customers are and how everything shakes out. The other piece that he knows, from a management standpoint, this is good management. He's diversified. 20% is a little heavy for upper design. You might consider diversifying space a little bit more to have 20% of your business with one customer is a little risky. But it's a pretty good spread. And the other thing is, from a client relationship standpoint, you can look along here and see that I actually demonstrated this the other day, that you can add a previous year column here. And you see that dropped. Okay, well, Dave Perry. $250 previous year, $0 this year. Oh, what happened to Dave? I gotta give him a call, I gotta take him out to lunch. So you can use this to kind of evaluate your relationships that have happened over time. So a lot of meaningful information here. Again, it goes one step beyond what the profit and loss tells you. Your sales number, this breaks it out by your customer base. Then you have your sales by item. Again, last month. So these are all your products and services that you provide as a business. So this provides a lot of information, again, in a glance to help you get your sales number. So that's down at the bottom, should be $24,000. There's your $24,000. So you know how it breaks out among your customers. Now you know how it breaks out among the various products and services you have. And they give you your percentages for that which is contributing the most towards your business. So it looks like, in this case here, gardening, I think at 13.1% is the largest part of their business. Now, for your inventory, or for your inventory, it'll tell you your gross margin. So if you are an inventory carrying company, look over here, it tells you your margin by your inventory item. And again, in management, if you know, well, my margin should be at least 33%, anything under it, you're going to reevaluate and see if that product's going to drop. Anything above it, you might want to expand the line. But again, a wealth of information at the click of a mouse. One other one I want to show you is the customer job and profitability report. So you have your job profitability, then you have your item profitability. And let's go to your profit and loss. I'm using all dates here. Job profitability on that, and profitability on that. Okay, so for you contractors who are doing job costing, these are 3 reports that you would want to maintain their integrity and the numbers between them. So if we go to your profit and loss first, again, that's the standard report, one you give to your tax accountant, it's plain vanilla. So it shows a total income of $104,000. So we've looked how it breaks out among the customers, we've looked how it breaks out among your items. So when you look at your job profitability summary, this is showing $112,000. Ideally, those 2 numbers should match. Okay, for whatever reason, they don't match here. But I have a lot of clients who are contractors, and what we do on a regular basis when we meet monthly is to review the report to make sure that these numbers tie out. Because what you constantly should be analyzing as an owner is your gross margin. Because your gross margin here, your gross profit, reflects your managing. Are you charging enough for the products and services you provide? And are you managing the cost side? Because what's left over here goes towards your overhead. So, as a contractor, you want to know, if my margin's not right, why? And these 2 other reports will help identify that. Because you go to your job profitability, and this shows your gross margin by project. So you can identify the projects that are dragging on your gross margin. So if these numbers don't match, then it's misleading and it's useless to help you troubleshoot where you might be having a drag in your gross margin. Same thing on the item profitability. So here we have the 104,840. So those are pretty close to matching. And then you have the direct costs here of 8,700. Here you have 10. So from my standpoint, if I was working with Larry, I'd say, hey Larry, you've got some issues here. If you really want to manage your company well, and really maintain your gross margin, you've got to make sure who's ever entering the data is sensitive to coding it properly so that you get an accurate reflection of your gross margin on these 3 reports.
Can I just
Yes.
really basic but with the gross margin, we're not considering the overhead. We're just looking at the projects.
Direct job-related costs. That's all you
Got it.
have.
And if I don't have a good gross profit margin, I'm not going to be able to pay my overhead.
Exactly right.
Got it. Thank you.
And for your industries, there are standards to say, for the big boys, I mean, you can compare companies of your size, but there's been a lot of data gathered for successful companies to say, this is the margin of healthy companies. Usually the minimum I've seen of any margin is usually around 33%. Usually don't like to go down lower than 33%. You get some companies that have about like Intel, I think they push like 50%. But that's because they're chip manufacturers, so there's a different kind of structure there. But usually companies like yours, usually it's 35 to 40% tops. But anyways, you can get that information from your industry. They'll tell you what the typical gross margin is, and that should be your target. That's what the successful companies do. That's what the ones who have figured it out, so to speak, and have been in business for years. Because they know for a standard typical company of 5 employees, 10 employees, 50 employees, a certain amount of revenues, how much overhead do they typically generate? So they know that. So they know, okay, well, in order to support that overhead, what does their margin have to be?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, were there any industry-specific reports anyone wanted to see? Are you all contractors? Except you, right? Are there any specific ones you wanted to see from the list? I can go back to the next section if you want. Well, I will show you where they are. QuickBooks Premier. They are under the. Yeah. So we got contractor. These are all the ones unique to contractors. One of the. I had one of my early clients was a general contractor, and they had QuickBooks Pro, and they asked, "Hey Frank, we really want to know how much money we spent by vendor, by job. And so I had to spend a good hour or so customizing QuickBooks Pro to get that report. So in QuickBooks Premier, we have that right here. So this tells you each of your various vendors and what jobs they worked on. And one of the powers of this report is that, again, from an estimating standpoint, if you're on a going forward basis and you're doing a job, let me change this to all, more meaningful numbers. So we've got patio and desk design company, and on the Leon job, we spent $1,200 about. So if you had a similar job to the Leon job, you'd say, hey, patio and desk design company, can you give me an estimate on what this job will cost? Well, it's going to cost $3,000. Well, wait a second. You did the Leon job, and it was the exact same job pretty much, and you charged me $1,200. What's up with that? So again, you have an opportunity to go back and get a glance of what people charge you on similar previous jobs, and what vendors you used on jobs, and then maybe use them again, or just have some point of reference to compare other vendors' bids and all that. Now this report here, the cost to complete, one of my favorites. I used to work with a fairly large, robust program, Timberline. They have that in there. And I'm not sure I'm not seeing this section here. Broker reports, industry specific, contractor, cost to complete. Okay. I might not have the estimates turned on. Okay, let me go to another file here. Let me go to Rock Castle.
Do you work with anybody that uses the QuickBooks POS system?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. It's not an easy POS system to work with. So I've a few clients that I have using it. I generally recommend it for people who have some real comfortability with computers. And I set it up for this one retailer who was very uncomfortable with computers, and it was a source of frustration for them. If they had to do it over again, they might not bother.
I'm calling I need a POS system, and I'd like it coaching in QuickBooks.
A lot of POS systems do it.
Yeah. In a small store.
So, this is awesome. This is such an incredible tool for contractors. What you're able to do is, this is the Abercrombie job. So, the key thing here is, what I suggest people to do is, you kind of play around with the numbers here. Because there's no way to precisely know how far complete you are within a particular job. It's really a guesstimate. So if you did, so here, I did 100, 175.5, and then 0, 0. And it gave, I'll show you the numbers it gave.
So that's assuming you're estimating the job in the system.
Right. So, so on the Abercrombie job, the estimated cost is $3,000. Those numbers I plugged in says it's going to be about 59. It's 59% complete at this point. The actual cost to date is $83.85. The cost to complete, because of that percentage, is another $1,217.50. So the expected actual cost is to be $9,600 relative to my estimated cost of $3,000. Okay, so this could be very early on in the job. You're like, wow, because of that change order that we couldn't recoup, we're going to end up way over here. So what you can do, what I suggest people to do, is to go back and go back and say, okay, maybe we're not so complete here. So maybe we're 100 here, and we're, you know if you're 100% complete or not, but this is just for example purposes. So we're 50% here, 10% here, and then 0, 0. So you go back, And then say, okay, if that's the case, what do my numbers look like? And it should be more favorable. So, so this is the kind of thing you play back and forth with at varying stages of your projects. So now the total expected actual cost is 98.22. So at this point you're 68.22 over. So 52% complete instead of 59%. So, yes.
Would you use this kind of information also translates into progress billing, progress invoicing?
No, this is different. This derives this information from the estimate you put in and the cost to date that you put in.
But can you use that same information then to do progress invoicing?
I guess if you wanted to, but it's really meant to show how you're managing the project, whether you're going to be on track or not. So any retailers here? You saw them? Did you want to see any one of those reports there?
I was interested in the gross margin by inventory item.
Good for you. That's a great report. Let me show that to you.
Because I'm about to start that project annually.
All right. Okay, so there's each of your particular items along the left.
Yeah.
And it gives you a bunch of extra information. It's similar to that sales by item report we looked at earlier, but this just isolates this margin portion of it. So it gives you the average price that's within the system, gives you the cost of goods sold, and then the gross margin, just deducting the sales amount, the cost of goods sold amount from the sales amount.
Yeah.
And then your gross margin dollars and gross margin percentage. And I have a few retail clients, and this has proven a very valuable report to adjust their inventory. Bottom line is you want to drop the ones that are below your target margin and expand the ones that are above the above the margin. Okay. Yes.
Can that also be done to gross margin by non-inventory or
No,
by services?
this is purely inventory. Yeah. Yes.
We do a combination. We do mostly work from contract, and we do retail sales as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we run two different QuickBooks programs. One for the retail sales,
Mhm.
and the other one for put everything in there with a separate category for the showroom sales versus the installations. Is
Mhm.
there incorporates both of them?
Now this part of the same company. I was doing both through one working class. Yeah, use the class thing. Class. We're not going over that. I showed you the profit and loss by class.
Yeah.
So you have your showroom division and you have your installation division. And, so I'm not sure who directed you to set them up on two different files, but you could definitely do it in one. How are reconciliations? How are bank reconciliations and doing your financials?
Well, what we do is we take the showroom sales and going into the, we do put it all in one program, and it takes a little bit of work.
Maybe doing that, weren't you, basically, on another,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Oh, you should be able to do them both in one.
We do both retail and wholesale sales. And I didn't know about class. Class sounds pretty cool.
It is special.
We've actually just the way that we design our accounts, the way our accounts are set up, we can separate our two businesses, our wholesale and our retail business. But I'm going to do class.
Well, just, if you haven't been to my other presentations, I can show you all very quickly. Classes is up here under preferences. You go up to accounting, and you pick class tracking. Okay, you just turn that on. And then when you enter a transaction, you click write checks, class box appears, and you select which class it applies to. Same thing with an invoice. We'll give you the option to put it to a class. And that will give you that breakout by installation, by showroom, by...
So if I have a vendor who sells me products that go into both classes, I could actually then
Split it.
split it.
Say you have, excuse me, I remember the other class you had, you mentioned if you had to say, I still call it a farm, but you know what I mean, it's equity, and you have two businesses.
Yep.
And you're using the same class in them.
Yep.
I'm just asking this without looking at it, right, so I might be really stupid asking this one. But when you go to invoice or whatever, you're gonna have that name, business one and business two. When you make an invoice, how are you gonna get business one on there when you're billing, say, the showroom, and business two if you're billing weekend?
Actually, on the invoice, you can split classes right within the lines of the right within the invoice.
No, for the header.
You use different templates.
Is that, I'm asking QuickBooks on everything.
You have to produce different
Well,
invoices.
are you saying one customer is in both classes?
No, okay. I had a store, and it was called Desiree's, and then I have a we're electronics business.
Mm-hmm.
And I have two different companies there.
Right.
But because they're both on my tax ID, from last week I learned I could have just shoved them all on the same one, so when I go to my account and bring them one report instead of having to provide it.
Yeah.
But on my invoice to my marine electronics customers, it said SS Electronics address, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you just have another invoice.
Is that,
They're just different
I would just have two
templates.
different invoices?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
I just, like I said, I'm just asking quick because you're here. I mean, I can
Yeah.
go home and play.
When you go to create it, there's a little pull down and it asks which invoice type you want.
Is everyone on the right
And then you
side?
switch, you have the company one invoice and company two invoice, different information and all of that. Yeah.
It's not that hard to do. We used to do that because we had multiple businesses under the same, like you did, like
Yeah.
personal businesses, and you can just flip them around, just to pick which invoice you want it to be when
Right.
you create the
Oh, we're on
invoice.
the right, it says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I've got different ones for different stuff. Yeah, I didn't
Any other questions on that section?
It does it.
I've been using it since I was Dawson, I'm still on.
Any other questions on that section? Okay, that's gives you an example of the summary reports, the detailed reports, and how they all connect. Next section is on customization. There are approximately 4 ways to kind of customize, massage your data within QuickBooks. The first, the most simplest, is the modify report feature. And then you can take your information and export it to Excel and massage it within a spreadsheet. The third, there are graphs within QuickBooks, so you can kind of look at your data in a different way that way. And the final is the ODBC feature, which is an advanced feature for, I've generally used it with larger companies that want to get their data into complex, either other software or into complex pivot tables or Excel databases. So in any report, the modify report feature is available in the upper left. You just basically click that button, and this is what pops up for summary reports. And these are all the various fields that you can click to manipulate the report. And these are the various fields and ways of manipulating detailed reports. So earlier in your booklet, it broke out the difference between the summary and detailed reports. The filter tab is just another way of basically restricting what's displayed within the report. And there's a lot of filters in here. And I love this part of the report feature because I use this a lot for people who are looking to get behind the scenes of the specific report. Let me go through those. So you take your profit and loss. This is technically a summary report. So if I go up and click modify report, and I have all these various things I can pick from. Now if you see here, these are grayed out, so these aren't available here. If I wanted to add percentage of income, this is very powerful because this tells you relative to your sales, where does each line item fall on a percentage basis. So here, Rock Castle Construction has a 61% gross margin. I can just tell you that without thinking that that's a very high gross margin. It's a very healthy gross margin. And then down here, see the overhead runs at about 38% of his business. Typically, the number is usually 20 to 25%. So that's running a little high. So the overhead's tracking a little high relative to what's standard for the average company. Then his bottom line, his net income, is 23%. That's huge. That's very successful. So again, typically, 5% is usually a good guideline. Again, some service companies might be closer to 30 to 40%, but here he's running about 23%. That's a good number. So again, just by clicking on modify report and clicking on the percentage of income, you can get that information.
Now, why can't you get previous year on that report?
Let's see. I'll do. Not sure if it'll change. Not sure.
So they're all for the dates.
Oh, good point. That's right. So if I change it last fiscal year. Right.
And
Yeah,
it's-
good catch. Yeah.
Is percentage of income and those ones, I've never noticed the ones on the right. Have they always been there? Is percentage of income a new thing that they've added recently, or is that?
I can tell you, I noticed firsthand. I think they were all there, but so another technique here is if you wanted to, so if I change it to all, and then this, and if I turn off those percentages here, I'm going to get 2 years, 3 years of data here. But again, you can go back historically, if you have 10 years of data here, you can get your profit and loss for the past 10 years just by changing the columns through the year. So a lot of the buttons that are on here are on the other, are right here too, so you don't always have to go to that particular tab. Now the detailed reports, so pretty quick. Something that I showed you. I showed you. Detail. Stuff I didn't modify report. So the key thing here is you can add columns. The primary strength of what you're able to do here. So for particular columns like item, to item here. I wanted to see, these columns you can move around. So if I wanted to see this over here, you can just drag it and move it over. If I wanted to narrow it, just highlight it and drag it. There are columns I didn't want to see, so I don't really care about type. I don't care about number. I don't care about the memo. So you can shrink and get it a little more readable. Now, something that I've learned in the last year or so, if I double click on here, and I just change this to total only, this just gives me all my transactions. And the name here is the customer name. So if you're doing job costing, the name of this column is the customer name. If you wanted to find out, well, who did I pay? Go up to here, modify report, and it's called source name. So this will tell you, so in this case here, I paid the Blue Contracted, I double clicked on it, and see the bill I paid for Blue Contracted. So a lot of people who are manipulating these reports and like, well, how can I find out, who's on the check or whatever? What's this name thing? Who's this name thing? Find out the payees, it's just stuff in the source name.
Is that the pro term?
Yes. Yeah. Another thing is if you have other people working on your data and data changes from mysteriously from one data to the next, and you're like, well, why did that happen? You can click these two off, entered, last modified, and last modified by. I was working with someone the other day, and they had prepared some reports for me to review, and they had a number, and then I came and generated a report and go, it's funny, he goes, the number changed. I go, well, how did that happen? And because he didn't think he had done anything. So we went right in, and so the date of his report, we can say for this example, was say 12:15 at 7 a.m. So they had these entries at 12:15, 20. So what's that? 8 o'clock. So what it showed was that he had forgotten that he had gone in and added a transaction after he had generated these reports. So this is a good way, if numbers do change after you print reports or something, this will tell you, oh, okay, the date of my original report, because usually what QuickBooks will do in the upper left, it'll tell you the time and the date of the report. So if you've got that sitting there and you've reviewed it with someone, and then you go to QuickBooks and it's changed, you'll have the date and time up there, and on this new report, it'll indicate on this column here, the date and time of the subsequent transaction. You say, oh, okay, those got added after the fact. And if you have multiple users, in this case here, there's only admin. If you have multiple users, if you have multiple people in your books, I would suggest creating up multiple users, because this one here, it'll tell you who made the bad entry. And admin should really only be used for the person who's going to make changes in the books. So this way here, you know the time they made the change and who made the change.
So that happens in login. So
Yes, yep, the login. That's the login name, is admin. So if you're Fred, the last would be last modified by Fred.
In some of the summary reports, it typically will sum, or some of the detailed reports, it will sum the dollar value, but it won't sum the quantity.
It won't, no, you can't get that, no?
They're not into quantity at all.
They're not, no, which they would be. It's a great point. I've had that frustration.
It does.
Now you gotta
Because I
send,
spend more time exporting to
Yeah.
just sum up, okay.
Just sum
so we
up.
know we sold them $5,000 worth of beer.
Right.
How many kegs was it?
Right.
Yeah, and it just, the only way we've been able to find to do it is export it.
oh, Cape Cod beer, huh?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, okay, yes. We met well back at the community bank, that's right. Okay, now I remember. Right, so you can't get that total.
You get the total, you extend that
No.
export.
Right.
Why is that? They just.
I don't know. I've been in a position to ask them. Maybe it just keeps their relationship alive in Excel. I don't know. You know. All right. As far as the filter tab, this is a way of using QuickBooks to narrow down the information on your report. So, for example, the account filter. If we go very simply back to the P&L, this shows every account. If you said, well, I just want to look at my cost of sale accounts, so you can go to accounts here, and you have your choices here. I just want to see that. Isolated by itself, you print that out. And transaction type is something that I use quite often, so if I'm in, one of the things I'll troubleshoot for people, let's remove that filter, is if their income isn't making sense. I will change this to total, so it just gives me everything. Then I'll say, I don't know what's in here, I think it's all invoices, dates, and change to all. Sometimes there'll be transactions coded in here improperly, and to try and isolate the problem, let's just say, for example, sales receipt is the proper entry that should be in sales. If I went up here and said, I just want to see sales receipts, because if things are coded improperly, sometimes you might see a bill in here, you might see a check in here. There should be no bills or checks in income. But there are none here, but I just, for example purposes, you could go in here and say transaction type. I just want to see sales receipts. So I click on that, and it filters it down, and those are just my sales receipts. So again, if you're trying to understand the data, troubleshoot, isolate problems, it's a great way of filtering everything out that you don't want to see, narrowing it down to what you do want to see. Anything else in here? See, there's a lot here. It should be filtered out. I think that's all I'm going to show you. Are there any ways of kind of manipulating these reports you all might have in your head saying, well, how do you do that? And how did you pull that out? Anything you've all tried and haven't been able to do? Any kind of questions like that? You're nodding your head, yes?
I've done the same thing. I've played around and, well, I was like, wow, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, because it eliminates a lot of unnecessary time I've wasted.
Right.
You know your example of the guy who's you haven't sold anything to in the last year, when you looked at your previous year? We've always wondered, is there a way to search for customers who haven't bought from you in a certain period?
Who haven't bought from you?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird request, but it's one of those ones where you're like, if you're missing somebody,
Right.
How do you remember that you're missing them?
Well,
Like an inactive type report.
inactive, well, no, you can make a customer inactive,
Yeah.
but as far as inactivity, no, there's nothing in there for that. So what I would do is, I would probably use that report I said and just compare, because you'll see the activity was large at one point and then it dwindled. I think in a lot of these reports,
Could
Yeah,
just change the year on it, right?
right, you could do multiple years and then have the years
Yeah, then
compared.
it just keep going back.
So if we did that report, for sales by customer summary, and we did a call, and we some calls, yes, you'd have all the years there. So we could export this to Excel and have it filter out by zeros or whatever. So that leads into the next, I believe my next customization is exporting this to Excel. So if we wanted to export this, there's just a button at the top, export, and you can pick a new Excel workbook. Generally that's what I do, unless you're working on a worksheet you're adding to, you can actually add to an existing workbook and you pick the particular sheet that you want to put the new information in. You can send it to a comment separated value, and you probably can take that information and bring it into another program. But more often than not, I use the new Excel workbook. Little button down here will give you tips for doing the link properly. I usually check that off. It's pretty basic stuff. Then here on this advanced tab, you can check off these boxes according to how you want the information to go over. Some of these are pretty useful, the auto outline and the auto filtering. It's just a way of grouping the information. The auto filtering is pretty, so these are all by default. I didn't check any of these. If you didn't like any of them, of how the data came over, you just uncheck them. So if I export this, so if I wanted to filter this and just have it by zero, this is zero, interesting, zero. So anything that was a zero in this column is related to this. So that's one way of doing it.
Is that because of the version of Excel you're using?
What I'm doing right here?
That you're getting those pull downs?
No, I just in the box. I didn't put that up specifically. When you export,
Yeah.
on the advanced tab, you have auto filtering. You can create those filters automatically. So it's filters for each column.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
So isn't that helpful? That was another step of manipulating the data. You can even do custom here. So you can do show rows where such and such equals a certain value, and or your last position, previous life.
Economics.
Economics.
Yeah.
So there's some ways you can play around using formulas and get to get your data played around a little more. So there's a lot you can do in here. So in here, if you want also the one report I typically show. Oops. Back to this one here. Actually, what's it? The job profitability, right? Again, another why is if I click my percentage difference here, it's not going to give me my gross margin percentage. Hopefully they'll get a clue, and what it does is basically give you a markup. It takes the dollar difference divided by your cost instead of your dollar difference divided by your revenue. So to get your gross margin percentage on this report, you can export it. And then you just put your percentage difference here. And then you just do your formula. And carry it down. And then change the format. Then you could probably, I haven't created these filtering things in here, but you could create a filter here and say, okay, I know my percentage is 40%, so I want to see everything, under 40%, because that's what I'm going to have to work on. So you can sort this by the percentage and all of that. So,
On the other doc,
yes?
Excuse me, I found someone's California driver's license, a female, out in the parking lot. Alicia Ann Pillar. Thanks.
There might be another class over there, I think. And there's a guy that you can go to.
Yeah, if you can't find her, drop it off.
Okay.
No shit.
All right, thanks.
on the other Excel spreadsheet that you exported,
Yes.
some of your customers are indented because they're jobs.
Yes.
Is there a function that you can turn off or on to because what happens, I usually go there and then I start sorting, and then all of a sudden you've lost all the job types, the master, and all
Right.
that, you know what I mean? Is there a way to manage that piece of it?
As it goes in Excel? No. No. I don't think there is. You have this auto outline.
Yeah, what does that do?
I've used it. What, see here? I believe. That just collapses it, right? It collapses the grouping here.
Oh,
right?
it's in Excel. Oh.
I might be using the old version of Excel though.
I got 2003. You know, at least 2003, so.
Okay.
Most people do. So, yeah, pretty cool too. You can collapse that and, yeah, it's by groupings, so I can collapse a whole group of these little subgroups and all that, so. Creating graphs. I wish QuickBooks had more graphs. They don't have a lot of graphs, but what you can do is export it to Excel and create a graph in there. So the graphs they do have is listed on that page. Actually, so you have an income and expense graph. I believe that's in the company financial, right here. They should have like a graph section, so you can go to all the graphs because they're kind of a pain to find. You have the income and expense graph. And you have flexibility here. I want to see it by account, by customer, by class. If you double click, it'll give you more detail. And you can actually go all the way to the original transaction. I think that's really cool. Powerful stuff. Something's, images are very powerful. So if you see something like this number here, you're like, what? No way. And then you find out, this entry was wrong, and you can go ahead and change it. There's your buttons down here, so you can just affect the way these graphs are displayed. You have your net worth graph. That's under there. That's in the company financial. That is company financial net worth graph. Because that's balance sheet related. It's basically showing your equity. So you got your assets in green, your liabilities in red, and your net worth in yellow. Again, that breaks it out specifically, and then you can click here and get more detail. And you have your sales graph and your sales. That's a nice piece of information to have. You can change your dates if you want to do sales over history. So that's a good sign of the business is gradually progressing. And again, sales by customer. And that's down here in this following section. By sales rep, and so on. And then finally, your budget versus actual graph. So again, you can change the way you're presenting the information. It's cool here. The blue shows favorable budget results. The red unfavorable. Again, you can double click. So although this showed favorable within it, was an unfavorable result on the insurance. And again, get you to the original transactions. So it's only, what, 4 graphs? They're pretty good. They tie to your direct information. They're a little hard to find, and if you wanted more graphs, you can't graph any one report in here, so you just have to export it to Excel and graph them there.
No cash flow graphing.
No, there's the ones I've listed, that's it. Just those 4. So you'd have to dump that into Excel. Unless I missed one, but I don't have cash flow places are here, so those aren't graphs. The last point is the ODBC drivers. So for any of you a larger company, that particular feature is available only for QuickBooks Enterprise and higher. That's their flagship product. It's cost several $1,000s. The best example I can give is I had a fire and flood company who they have project managers, and they wanted to reward them by project, by gross margin. So the data is all in there in QuickBooks. They just don't have it presented in a specific report. So what this ODBC driver does is take all the information in QuickBooks and just presents it in another way. The ODBC driver, I believe, is free. It comes with that program. You just have to have someone to work with that knows how to manipulate the data together the way you want. You can put it into Microsoft, into pivot tables in Excel. It can interface with other third-party software programs. So if, again, you're a larger company, then if the reports aren't doing it for you in QuickBooks, there is a way within Enterprise to get that information your way. So that's the reporting section. Any questions before we go on to budgeting? So I'm tracking pretty quick here. We're going to be done before 5, so feel free to. We're all got everything you need to know? Yeah.
Can I take 30 seconds for a tape change, Mark?
Sure.
And you say, what do you do? It's refund the customer.
Right.
It then produces.
A $40 check and a $60 check. Correct.
It can't.
Well, why didn't you just create one credit memo for 100?
Well, because there are existing credit memos every time. Like they're actually transactions. We take back the tag, we give them the credit memo.
Right.
And the only way I've been able to do it is order one of them, make the other one 60, it's bound to happen.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Can't.
it
There's
can't,
nobody
it
to
doesn't
buy
know
it.
that even though I'm creating 2 checks to the same person, to combine them together.
Right.
How about if when you're there, you know how if you stay out to an incident and it has them both there and it asks us for the check number? If you put the same check number there?
It'll still print them.
It should give you an option in there, and it doesn't. I agree with you. There should be like an option in there. Would you like that?
Because at the end of the season, we'll have a customer that has 4 different credits, each one for $40.
Yeah.
So they're gonna write them 4, used to write them 4 checks for $40. So then I figured out I could go in, void 3 of the checks and write the 4th one for $160 and print that.
Or, you could do, create an invoice for $100, apply those credits against it, and then just create a $100 credit.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And then the numbers don't correspond.
We already know that, so it's a different way of work,
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right, we'll go into our next section then. The reason I included this feature is it's a very easy feature, but it's a very powerful feature. In this economy, we should all be thinking, how can we save money? How can we better manage our businesses? So QuickBooks has a really easy to use budgeting feature that you can implement to get a sense of how you're tracking on your income and expenses at any given point in time, so you can then make adjustments. So budgeting can be a 4-letter word, and being an accountant type, it's a 4-letter word in my house with my wife. She absolutely hates me when I said, "You're over budget, babe." And she's like, "Oh, shut up," So, but it should be a 4-letter word for a business, because it is a proactive tool to help you, particularly in this economy. Many of us are probably experiencing flat or declining sales, but costs don't go down typically. So what this will help you do is as you are experiencing flat or declining sales, is to put a budget in place to kind of anticipate, to say, okay, if this happens, what can I do to anticipate that and be proactive? So again, a lot of you are sitting here today because you are proactive owners or managers. Again, just a general best practice is a budget is best coordinated with a business plan. Again, QuickBooks does have a built-in business plan feature. They keep enhancing it every year, so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. And a business plan doesn't have to be a cumbersome 50-page plan. You can do a very simple couple-page plan just to say, where am I going to be in the next year, 2 years? And I've worked with some decent-sized companies here on the Cape, and the ones that are doing okay are the ones that foresaw what was coming and anticipated, and they had a plan in place, they had a budget in place, they didn't react. As I'm showing you here, it creates a culture in your company. If you're constantly reacting and putting out fires, and after the fact versus anticipating, and they go, wow, how'd you know that was going to happen? I mean, none of us know exactly what's going to happen, but we can kind of guess to say, okay, the economy's off, so I'm going to see how I manage my business if we were off 10%, and you can plan accordingly. What's it going to be at 5%? What's going to be 20%? So you can kind of plan as you go kind of thing. Now, as far as your banking relationships, again, we're hearing in the news, I mean, you don't know who to believe these days. Are banks lending or are they not lending? From what I understand is the smaller regional banks are lending, Cape Cod 5, Bristol Savings, Cape Cod Cooperative, the smaller banks. I guess the CEOs of the larger banks, Bank of America, and all that, said they're lending. It's not at the same clip they were doing at the boom, but they're still lending. So for you, using QuickBooks and having a budget in place, having a verifiable balance sheet and profit and loss, to go into a bank with that versus going into a bank with a shoebox or one right system or I don't know, just lend me money, the bank is more likely to, particularly in these times, lending standards are getting more strict. You can use QuickBooks to stand out relative to others who are competing for the limited amount of dollars that are out there. So can't emphasize enough, the budget will go a long way to reinforce your credibility. Also for outside investors, any sophisticated investor is going to demand a balance sheet and a profit and loss that is verifiable. If you go on top of it a budget saying this is what we're anticipating for the next 18 months, it'll go a long way towards people saying, I have confidence in you, sure, I'll lend you some money and invest in your company and help you go to the next stage. QuickBooks has quite a few budgeting options. You can budget by P&L, by account, by class, and by project or job. And the balance sheet can be done by account. I don't know anyone who, I guess the balance sheet, you can kind of anticipate where your loan balances might be at a point, kind of budget out where your receivables would be and all that. But typically, the budgeting feature is used for the P&L. QuickBooks gives you the ability to use your previous year's data or start from scratch. So it doesn't go back someone had asked, if you have 10 years worth of data, will it somehow average those 10 years to come up with a budget? No, it just goes back the one previous year from the year that you created the budget for. So to access the feature, you just go up to the company menu, select planning and budgeting, and then select set up budgets. And this is an example of a budget, a P&L budget by account. And this next one is an example of a P&L by class. So you can do it by your divisions of business.
Realistically, you can't create your budget in there, can you?
Yeah.
Really? How do you
Why
do
would you?
without totals?
Yeah, I'll show you.
We always seem to do ours, and we've been doing it for years.
I'm not sure what you mean, but I'll show you. It's,
in an Excel spreadsheet, so you can have totals by.
so if you go up to your company, planning and budgeting, set up budgets. So the thing I showed before, the P&L by account. Actually, to go to the beginning, because there are existing budgets, that's why I came here. If you went to create your budget, you pick your year, and you do P&L. And then you can pick by customer, job, or class. So we're going to do just by account. Then you can create your budget from scratch. So what's going to come up will be completely blank. Or you can create a budget from the previous year's actual data. Then you hit finish. And then what's going to come up is this if you've chosen to use previous year's data. So here's your totals right in this column here, your annual totals.
Well, but it doesn't give you your total income. It only gives you your total. What's your total income? You have labor income and you have, I can't read all those, but materials income and you've got.
Right, but when you go to your, I believe when you go to your report.
It'll, depending on how you have your account set up, yes.
So if you go here, so there's my budget total income, 5,688.
Right, but if you're actually trying to build the budget month by month,
Yeah?
we've always found that it's really hard to do it right in there. You got to do it in Excel and then just put the data into QuickBooks because you can't look at the total. Well, say I know that I want my total income for next year to be, pick a number, $1 million.
Right.
I'm not going to do. It's not going to be even over the 12 months.
Right.
So I need to know that the total is $1 million as I'm adding in each month to make sure that my total income is $1 million. Depending on how you're building it, are you building a cost-based budget, are you building an income-based budget?
Right, so if we go to create one from scratch, so some of you may have income components, or you might just have one line. So you're talking about multiple lines?
Multiple lines of income, yeah.
Okay.
Well, like this one has multiple lines of income, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you know your components? Why wouldn't you know if you've got $1 million of total income, you've got to have a sense of what the total is going to be for components, right?
Right, but how do I know that the total equals $1 million at this point? You start adding numbers in there, how do you know it's $1 million, you got $1 million?
Right, well,
It doesn't
I would say my design income component is going to be $250,000. That's how you'd have to start.
Right.
So if that's looking right, then it does give you your running total here. So I'm at 10,000 right now, and then
Yeah, only across the row, but
Right.
not across the column. So how do you know when you're at $1 million worth of income?
you don't. You have to know your components.
Right.
So, but I think you're doing it by component. I would think you wouldn't be doing it by the. You have your total $1 million, and you got 3 items, and each of them are going to be $333,000. I don't think that's how you'd be approaching it.
Yeah, but in the seasonal nature of your pod, it can't be even. It's not even. So you got to then build it up both ways. It kind of.
No, but I'm saying by component.
Right.
So that's the only way you approach it is
But
to break
you
that
can't
million.
add summaries.
No,
There's
no,
no
you can't.
summary.
No.
Okay.
So as you see here, I've got just putting it in from scratch. I got the 10,000 and the 20,000. So you use the feature?
Oh yeah, we've been using it for years.
Good for you. I'm glad you're all here. I don't know many who do use it. So I preach the mantra.
It worked
of
for a
using it.
not-for-profit that also used it. So
Right.
that's how I got into using it. That's how we get into using it.
So if you wanted to save data entry, you could just hit copy across. So it'll take you 20,000 and just put it across. If you wanted to adjust your row amounts by a specific amount, so I wanted to say each remaining month I want to pop by 5%, it'll do each of them by the 5% equally. So 21,000, 21,000, and so on. Just saving some data entry. I go back here and I say I want to enable compounding, and I do 5%. It's going to do the percent upon percent. So we'll go from 21 to 22,150 to 23,152 and all that. So again, just ways of saving data entry. And then you have your profit and loss by class. So you have your various classes here. So we can just do the process I just showed. And this is another way of just keeping on top of your business as the year progresses. Instead of having a generic budget, if you are by class, you should have a profit and loss by class. And then they do have the profit and loss by customer. I don't recommend that. Use the estimating feature of QuickBooks because that'll give you the equivalent. So that's as simple as create a budget. I mean, these fields are the ones you just type in and you put in your number, and it gives you your running total, and then you have ways of saving time and data entry. You can't copy from top down, you copy from left to right. But I would suggest the best practice of using this feature, I don't know how you use it, but is use your previous year's data and have it come over because that gives you a point of reference to know where to start, so to speak. So it'll all be in there and then you can just type over it and go from there.
Yeah, that's exactly how we do it. But typically, we'll export it so that we can change the percentages by month depending on, growth and stuff like that.
Now, when you say export it, you export your P&L.
We'll take the P&L
Yeah.
and last year's budget, figure out how badly we either hit or didn't hit last year's budget,
Right.
export them both, add an extra column for every month, go in and figure out, okay, we want to increase, say we want to increase our growth for this year. We hoped last year was going to be 50%. It ended up being 60 by the time we were done.
Mhm.
This year we're shooting, I think, for 25%. And so we want to make sure the total number is 25%, but then you got to distribute it. We're not going to grow in January.
Right.
If anything, we're going to, actually might even get smaller this January.
Right.
But so then we go in and each individual column and row, each row, whether it's retail income, wholesale income, we actually even have more classes than that. And then we go in and manipulate individual numbers so that in the end the bottom number is acceptable and all the individual months are.
Yeah.
And then we track by month. So I can go and look after sales go in today. I can tell as of today whether we're on budget for February.
Right.
It's not all that pretty right now. February.
Well, 25% is a big number, so if you're at 5%, you're doing better than a lot of people.
Exactly. The question I have is, it appears that QuickBooks then takes that number. Say you're going to do $10,000 this month, and it splits it out over the number of days for this month. Do you know if there's any way within QuickBooks to tell it to basically ignore the weekend days?
No, I don't have that.
Because then what happens is on Saturday you're looking good, by Monday you look terrible because you've missed two, what they consider basically selling days, and there's no sales.
No,
Because,
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
yeah. So I was looking at Friday's data, not Monday's.
Then when you're done, as you're going, you can hit save, and then when you're completely done, you hit OK, and you have your budget in there. So then the next step is to track it. Again, you track it on a regular basis. And so you have reports, budgets and forecasts, get your budget overview, so you pick which budget you form. Someone asked this the other day, and I didn't know firsthand, I don't know. It only lets you create one budget per year, right? You can't create multiple budgets per year, right? Okay. That's what I figured.
That I've ever been able to say, yeah.
It makes sense too, because how can you do this report if you have multiple budgets?
Well, and the hardest part is you got to create the budget, then you leave it. You can't, you shouldn't go back and change the budget.
Right, so that's the, are you aware of the forecast feature in here?
No.
We're not going to go over that today, but the purpose of that is to do just that. You can set up a forecast. So that's basically your variation from the budget. So you don't touch your budget, you keep that steady, but the forecast is what you would change as the year goes. And it's the same process if you have that's the budget.
Now, is that a premier feature or?
Good question, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's in,
I'll look at it.
I'm guessing it's in, well, they say that in Premier is advanced business planning features. So I don't know if that forecast is one of those.
The forecast?
Because I've never
Yeah.
seen the business plan tool either.
Business planning tool is definitely Premier. You have Pro? Kevin?
I have them both, but right now I'm looking at Premiere. Are you asking, does it say set up a forecast?
No, does Pro have forecasting? When you're in Pro. Find out.
So anyways, this will give you your budget overview. So you can just look at it all on one screen. And
I have to say that doing a budget makes you feel better.
so here's that total line that she asked about that you can't get within the budget. This will give you a total so you can understand. So if it doesn't, you have to go back to the budget and change it and all that.
Because even when things feel like they're not like, oh, gee, are things slow or not slow, or, we know we have a number. You know, we have, if we make the numbers, if we get relatively close to making the numbers on a monthly basis, then we'll get relatively close to making the big number, and everybody will get paid, everybody gets their vacations, and so frequently I find that I'm like, oh, okay, it sounds better than I thought it was.
Right.
You know, because your perception is frequently way different than actual. And so for us, we look at it a lot. I probably use that more than I use anything else in QuickBooks.
That's great.
2006 QuickBooks Pro says, for planning a budget, this goes set up budget, cash flow, project, and management decisions.
So there's no forecasting. Oh, there's none.
Then you have your budget versus actual, which, what's your first name again? Beth, which Beth uses regularly, which again, like you're tracking it on a daily basis? The budget
We try not to do it daily. We actually, the other day, were looking at it on a monthly basis, and even depending on how long the month is, when the days fall, it can make a significant difference for us. We sell more beer on Friday than we do on Monday.
Yeah.
So if the month ends on a Tuesday, sometimes it's not as good looking as when it ends on a Friday.
Right.
So it just, we try not to look at it too closely,
Right.
but we do a lot of this, and we also do like this year's versus last year's, and what was last year's budget number versus this, because
Right.
the other thing is a little bit when you're budgeting, you're throwing stuff against the wall.
Right.
Let's go for 25%. Okay, what do you think?
Right.
So we find that it does make us feel a little bit better. It also finds that we're making some decisions about, like marketing decisions we need to make for the spring based on the fact that January's number wasn't quite as good as we wanted it to be, or
Yeah.
and things like that. So because we know if we make all the numbers, then everything will be fine.
Right.
And so for us, it works really well.
Good.
And then I can also print out for my sales guy. I don't really want him to see all the expense stuff.
Right.
So I can then go in and use, we said
Yeah,
modify
like
report,
report,
and we filter, and I say
like
income accounts only.
Yeah.
And then he can and I can print that report for him, and he can see where he's making his number
Right.
or not making his number on income,
Right.
and not worry about the financial side, the cost side of the business, because
Right.
that's not really his thing.
Right. Good. Good stuff. It's always good to hear people who are using these. So this is your budget versus actual, and I broke it up by days. You can break it up in any meaningful period, so it's typically month. So it'll give you your, this is January of 2012, your budgeted number. This is the actual, that's the budgeted. And then your dollar over budget, percentage budget. So you can, just like she's describing, you can track this on a regular basis and make your adjustments as you go. And then the other report, profit and last budget performance, pick which one it is, and next, finish, and cost, flexibility, and lead. You can probably use this too, that's just kind of,
Not as much.
no? Because what this
Because
compares,
I haven't seen it before.
well, this compares your month, this compares your year-to-date, and it shows you your budget. And then I would throw this into Excel, and then, have some columns.
Yeah, I've never seen this report before, so. You get into the thing where you use certain reports, and
Yeah, you get comfortable
I
with
have them
it.
memorized across the
Yeah.
top, and they're the ones I use, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of one of the reasons why I came, because it was like, there's got to be things that this thing does that I don't know how to do yet. So.
Right. Sometimes you know most everything because it's pretty straightforward. So I would put this in Excel because you can put dollar difference in percentage budget. So this will show you year-to-date budget difference. What would be cool is if they had a column, well, if I'm tracking on this, how will I end up in my annual budget? And that you can
That's
play
part of
around
your
with
like
Excel.
cost to finish.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing in the budgeting feature to do that. We'll probably come up with that.
We do find when we use these reports, a lot of times my husband really likes them so that they're sorted with the biggest numbers first, so then you can
Yeah.
see your biggest, your biggest income centers
Yeah.
first, because frequently it'll do it by whatever way the account is, or alphabetical, or
Right.
some
It's usually by the account.
Yeah.
It's the chart accounts driven by that.
Yeah, so like my bottle deposits show it first, and
Yeah.
they don't really,
Right.
they're not really part of the grand scheme of things.
So that's pretty much the budgeting feature. I hope you see that's very, very simple and very powerful. It's just getting the numbers in there and then using the reports and monitoring it on a monthly basis. Anyone have any questions on that? That's basically the presentation. I went over the other night. I'm under today, so if you all have specific questions, I'll hang around. Anyone have anything specific?
Do you have to be set up for classes to be able to do that budget thing? I mean, because
Well, there's profit and loss by class, so if you're going to do your, you're doing your budget by class, you have to have that class to set up.
Well,
We don't use classes like that.
I don't get buses at all.
Vegas and Australia.